Hi, good afternoon. I'd like to present to you a story of a courageous Roman woman. Hortensia was well educated. She studied Greek and Roman literature and history in 67 BC during the second century. Hortensia was married but was later widowed. During this time in ancient Rome, women were excluded from politics. However, Hortensia, being educated as she was, became a great orator, which proved beneficial for the Roman women. During this time, the country was ruled by three powerful men. A triumvirate was formed, which is a group of three men of great power, and they were Octavia, Antony, and Lepidus, and they were all responsible for condemning many men to death, either through the judicial system or other immoral reasons. There came a time when funding for war was necessary, so they began taxing 1,500 wealthy women in Rome. The women were outraged that they had to finance wars, particularly because they had no voice in public policy. And many of the men that were murdered were relatives of the women by the triumvirate and had to have their wealth confiscated, only left to live on their dowries. This also outraged the women, and they knew something had to be done. So they chose Hortensia to be their spokesperson. She was petitioned to speak on behalf of the Roman women. She had to appeal her case to the triumvirate, who was outraged by having their authority challenged by a woman. In my understanding of the second century, women were seen but not heard. They were ruled by men and unable to take part in any public policy or protest inequality. This was a time of war and a fight for political power. Men were the ruler of the land and the cause of destruction and death. Many women were forced to pay taxes to fund their civil wars, despite their exclusion from many public policies. Today, we are still protesting injustice, but the feminist movement have made great strides in addressing inequality. We are constantly being challenged by our government, but we now have laws in place that protects our rights and hold one accountable if those rights are infringed in any way. We can thank women like Hortensia, who began the feminist movement before there was such a movement. She was the first woman to stand up to a group of powerful men who was determined to place unfair taxes on women because they could. Hortensia decided that one must speak up and demand that justice is due to us all. So, during the late 1960s and continuing to the late 1980s, the women liberation movement emerged. This movement was primary in the industrial nations of the Western world, which affected great change politically, intellectually, and culturally throughout the world. The feminist movement is comprised of women of racial and cultural backgrounds, of diverse cultural backgrounds. However, they all support economic, psychological, social freedom for all women. The feminist movement has propelled women to progress from being second-class citizens in their societies worldwide. I truly enjoyed this text, and I would recommend every woman to read it. I think this reading will help us all to see how, as women, we have evolved, and know that it is women back in the second century, maybe even before then, who paved the way for women of today and the women of tomorrow. Thank you. Okay, let's see how that looks.